A friend of mine bought a pool table for his basement, but the basement has really bad lighting, especially for playing pool. I thought I'd make him a pool table lamp using some recycled and reclaimed parts I've been saving. Thanks for coming along with me as I build. If you're new here, click that subscribe button to keep updated with all my upcoming videos. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back. I start out by cutting some reclaimed barnwood to length and width. This barnwood was salvaged from a 100-plus-year-old barn in Wisconsin, and it has a great weathered finish and remnants of red paint still visible. The idea with this is to make a hollow beam that has a substantial appearance but actually uses very little material. To do this, I mitered the corners of the wood pieces to provide a seamless wraparound look to the beam. After cutting the miters, it's a simple matter to glue the boards together. I use a pin nailer to hold the boards in position during glue up and to keep them from slipping when I clamp. Since the pins are so thin, they virtually disappear when looking at the weathered surface of the boards. While the glue dries, I go about dismantling and cleaning the light shades. These used to be hanging in the common areas of my old apartment complex, and I rescued a bunch of them from the dumpster before they went to waste. They're pretty simple in construction, and the pieces come apart by unscrewing a couple components. After dismantling, I clean the dust and dirt off the shades with denatured alcohol. These shades happen to be made of aluminum. Now the fun part. Painting the shades with an oxidizing iron paint. The stuff is somewhat expensive, but the results are pretty impressive. According to the directions, you're supposed to apply a primer coat before the paint, but I didn't find this necessary. Supposedly, it'll stop an acid reaction with the base material. At any rate, you'll want to use a respirator with this paint because it stinks. I ended up putting 3 coats on and then touching up any bare spots. Once the paint dries, you can apply the oxidizing solution to the paint. The stuff is pretty cool. Just apply a liberal coat and wait as the iron in the paint starts resting before your very eyes. This next step is optional, but I wanted to knock back the orangey hue of the rust and also provide some physical protection of the paint layer. I sprayed on 3 coats of satin lacquer over the top. I recommend you do this in a well-ventilated area or outdoors. The fumes are not great for you, and your HVAC system will do a fine job of distributing them throughout your house if you do it indoors. Ask me how I know. With the light shade set aside to dry, we can move on to adding the bottom of the Barnwood box. First, I cut the second board to rough length and width of the opening, and then take measurements directly from the box itself. Marking with a knife ensures accurate cut lines. The box has a slight taper from end to end, which is difficult cut to make accurately with the table saw. Instead, I use a jointer plane to sneak up on the line that I marked. With the piece cut and fitting in the box, all that's left to do is glue it up. With the box completed, now it's time to move on to adding and wiring up the lights. I went with the simple system for hanging the lights. I just drilled a matching hole for the wire and fed them through. Then, the lights are fixed in place using clamp connectors. I begin the wiring process by attaching a metal junction box on the inside of the beam. This is a leftover from demoing my kitchen. The junction box isn't strictly necessary, but it does neaten things up. Since the leftover wiring for two of the shades isn't long enough to reach the junction box, I had to splice some longer wire onto them. Again, these are leftover 14 gauge wire from my kitchen. Taping and tacking the wires down makes things tidy. I used more clamp connectors when feeding the wires through the junction box to 1. Keep them in place, and 2. Protect the wires from shorting out against the metal body of the box. My buddy has a ceiling light fixture in a handy location for this lamp, so I decided to use a cord with a plug end to provide power for the lamp. If you decide to directly wire this to a ceiling junction box, then a power cord won't be necessary. Wiring this up is a simple matter of matching black to black and white to white, then attaching the wires together using wire nuts. And of course, I had to test the light out once everything was wired up. My friend has an old fiberboard tile ceiling instead of openly accessible joists, so mounting the lamp is going to be a bit tricky. I could have just hung the lamp from some hooks and chain, but I wanted it to be as tight to the ceiling as possible given the low headroom. My idea here was to use some headlock screws, which have a wide head, and some slotted mounting brackets. The brackets have a shallow counterbore to catch the head of the screw. The brackets are fixed to the beam using pocket hole screws, which keeps all the fasteners hidden within the beam. Mounting the light to the ceiling is a relatively easy task. First, we found the center of the pool table by measuring the halfway point from each direction. Then I used a plumb bob to find the same spot in the ceiling and marked it. These ceiling tiles are attached to furring strips below the floor joists, and they provided a convenient place to add the headlock screws. I measured 2 feet to either side of the center mark and marked for the screws. With the screws marked, I screwed them in, leaving enough clearance for the mounting brackets to slide on and off easily. Double checking the screw measurements, I then transferred these to the Barnwood beam and installed the mounting brackets. Now to mount the light. We had to go by feel to find the slots in the mounting brackets, and there was a slight hump in the ceiling, hence we had to persuade it into position. Ideally, this should just slip in without having to hammer anything, but that's what we had to do. We turned the light socket into an outlet with a screw-in socket adapter. This allows the pull chain on the light fixture to control the new lamp. All that's left to do now is enjoy the light. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe for more.